You're watching Free Speech TV.
From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Postmaster Center, roger, engage.
1-8, engage. Clear. Come on. Clear.
Why was he shot with his children in the car? They did nothing wrong. He was helping a journalist. What was his crime? What was the crime of our children who are left with no father and no support?
The family of one of the people killed in the 2007 U.S. Apache helicopter attack on a group of Iraqi civilians in Baghdad will speak with a member of the military unit involved in the shootings. He served alongside the soldiers heard in the video for 14 months before leaving the military as a conscientious objector. Then a newly declassified document offers new evidence that former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger canceled a warning to South American governments against carrying out a secret program of international political assassinations just days before a former Chilean ambassador was killed in Washington, D.C. And looting Main Street. We'll speak with journalist Matt Taibbi about how the nation's biggest banks are ripping off American cities with the same predatory deals that brought down Greece. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As many as 5 Afghan civilians have been killed and another 18 wounded in a U.S. attack in Afghanistan. Witnesses say U.S. forces opened fire on a passenger bus near the Afghan city of Kandahar earlier today. The bus driver and a passenger told the New York Times a U.S. convoy opened fire just as the bus began pulling over to the side of the road to allow another military convoy to pass. The bus was said to be full of civilian passengers when U.S. troops opened fire. All of the windows on one side of the bus were shot out. Some of the wounded were left in critical condition, and the death toll could rise. President Obama is hosting scores of world leaders in Washington today for a summit focusing on unsecured nuclear materials. Obama began a series of meetings Sunday with visiting delegations from 46 countries. Ahead of the summit, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said the aim is to keep nuclear weapons away from terrorist groups.
The risk of nuclear attack has actually increased, and the potential consequences of mishandling this challenge are deadly. We are trying to make this summit the beginning of sustained international effort to lock down the world's vulnerable nuclear materials within 4 years and reduce the possibility that these materials will find their way into the hands of terrorists.
As the Obama administration pledges nuclear cooperation at the summit, it's taking pains to reassert the predominance of the U.S. nuclear arsenal. In an interview with ABC News, Clinton said the U.S. is spending $5 billion this year to modernize its nuclear weapons.
We intend to maintain a robust nuclear deterrent. Let no one be mistaken. The United States will defend ourselves and defend our partners and allies. We intend to sustain that nuclear deterrent by modernizing the existing stockpile. In fact, we have $5 billion in this year's budget going into that very purpose. And with this emphasis on our nuclear stockpile and the stewardship program that we are engaged in, that will be stronger than anybody in the world, as we always have been, with more nuclear weapons than are needed many times over. And so we do not see this as in any way a diminishment of what we're able to do.
President Obama is vowing a speedy appointment to replace the retiring Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens. The 89-year-old Stevens announced Friday he'll step down at the end of the court's regular session in June. At the White House, Obama paid tribute to Stevens' 35 years on the bench.
He's worn the judicial robe with honor and humility. He has applied the Constitution and the laws of the land with fidelity and restraint. He will soon turn 90 this month, but he leaves his position at the top of his game. His leadership will be sorely missed. Now, as Justice Stevens expressed to me in a letter announcing his retirement, it is in the best interest of the Supreme Court to have a successor appointed and confirmed before the next term begins. and so I will move quickly to name a nominee, as I did with Justice Sotomayor.
Stevens has long been regarded as the leader of the liberal wing of the Supreme Court. In a statement, the American Civil Liberties Union said, quote, "The civil liberties legacy of Justice Stevens is deep and broad. He's promoted racial equality, supported gay rights, and defended a woman's right to choose. Without his leadership, the Bush administration might well have succeeded in its effort to deprive Guantanamo detainees of any rights and any access to U.S. courts," they said. The Obama administration's choice to head the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel has withdrawn herself from consideration after more than a year of Republican-led opposition to her nomination. The nominee, Dawn Johnson, is a law professor at Indiana University. Republicans had criticized her for opposition to Bush-era interrogation and surveillance policies, as well as her work for an abortion rights group 2 decades ago. She was left off a list of 15 recess appointments by President Obama last month. The Obama administration's now defending the U.S. military's indiscriminate killing of 12 Iraqis after refusing to back calls for a probe. Last week, the watchdog website WikiLeaks released a classified U.S. military video showing a U.S. helicopter gunship indiscriminately firing on Iraqi civilians in 2007. On Sunday, Defense Secretary Robert Gates offered a staunch defense of the U.S. service members who carried out the attack. Speaking to ABC News, Gates claimed the forces were operating in a, quote, combat and split-second situation, despite the fact the civilians weren't engaged in any hostile act and the helicopter had hovered above them for several minutes. Gates made the comments in response to a question of whether the video footage would damage the U.S. image abroad.
They're in a combat situation. The video doesn't show the broader picture of the firing that was going on at American troops. It's obviously a hard thing to see. It's painful to see, especially when you learn after the fact what was going on. But you talked about the fog of war. These people were operating in split-second situations, and you know we've investigated it very thoroughly.
The rescue effort has ended at West Virginia's Upper Big Branch mine after the discovery of the bodies of the 4 miners who remain missing after last week's explosion. Their deaths brought the death toll to 29 in the worst U.S. mining disaster in nearly 40 years. West Virginia Governor Joe Manchin held a news conference Saturday shortly after the bodies were found.
We did not receive the miracle that we prayed for. We have accounted for 4 miners that had been unaccounted for. We have a total of 29 brave miners who were recovering at this time. None of the chambers had been deployed. And none of our miners suffered. So this journey has ended. And now the healing will start.
In a statement, President Obama called for a probe into the mine blast, saying the tragedy requires, quote, accountability. The owner and operator of the mine, Massey Energy, has been cited for dozens of safety violations in recent years, with 57 citations just last month. Poland's declared a week of national mourning following Saturday's plane crash that killed its president and dozens of top political and military leaders. The crash took place in Russia. President Lech Kaczynski was heading a delegation to Russia to commemorate the 1940 massacre of dozens of Polish military officers by the Soviet Union secret police. The ceremony had been seen as a sign of growing reconciliation between Poland and Russia. At least 96 people died in the crash. At the Polish embassy in Washington, Polish Ambassador Robert Kupiecki thanked Americans for their condolences.
I would like to extend my words of thanks, of gratitude to President Barack Obama and American people, many people who contacted the embassy, who contacted me personally, sharing their words of sympathy and condolences. Thank you very much for your attention.